From WBGO, this is Newark Today, your monthly look at what's happening in and around New Jersey's largest city. And now, here's your host, Michael Hill.
Welcome to another edition of Newark Today. I'm Michael Hill. We are talking to the mayor this evening in our first half hour here about a lot of topics, a lot of things taking place in Newark, the 10-point literacy program, summer youth employment, the recent Supreme Court decision on affirmative action, Newark sewer and water rates increasing, and a couple of other topics if we have time. It's a hodgepodge of things tonight. And of course, we'll be talking to the mayor about perhaps his political ambitions beyond the city of Newark. Of course, we'll do that. Mr. Mayor, of course, thank you for joining us once again this evening, sir.
Not a problem. Thank you.
And we want to hear from the folks who are listening out there to give us a call at 973-297-0941. That's 973-297-0941 about any of these topics or anything else you'd like to ask the mayor this evening. That's for the first half hour. In the second half hour, we'll be talking about something taking place at Rutgers University in Newark with Alzheimer's and focusing on African Americans, trying to invite them in, to get them to come in to participate in a study, a national study that's taking place at Rutgers University. A lot to talk about that in our second half hour. In our first half hour, as we said, let's go ahead and start. Mr. Mayor, welcome once again. I want to talk about this 10-point literacy program that you kicked off just the other day. And I was reading here, I'm trying to make sure I understand this. In 2022, Newark's citywide literacy passing rate for all grades was 27%. Of course, we're still in the pandemic phase.
Right.
What does that mean, all grades? Was only 27% passed at the proper grade level?
Yes, that's exactly what it means. Yeah.
That's awfully low.
Yeah, very low. And about 19% in the third grade, which that number really stood out to me the most, because third grade is very, very important.
It's crucial in terms of what
it
kind of determines
whether kids actually know how to read. Because after the third grade, you actually use reading to access information. If you can't read by the third grade, then everything beyond that becomes increasingly more difficult for you.
27% overall and 19% third grade. Do we know what it was pre-pandemic?
Well, I don't have that off the top of my head. I do know that the recent numbers that are coming out are a lot more promising, looking better than the numbers that we have now, which is good. But even before that, when we saw these numbers, it kind of light a fire under you, saying we need to do something now. So we began to pull together folks and start talking about what a citywide kind of agenda would look like. Some simple stuff, not all that people can do, but easy things that people can do immediately that can ensure that your child is on par, on a trajectory to being a reader and being successful in school.
Now, you said on your team, that's you, the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Sharni Brown, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Mary Ann Riley, and other dignitaries were there. And this also involves the school superintendent as well.
Right. And community-based organizations, some of the charter organizations, folks that got together is like in a kind of brain trust to talk about what we can do. Easy 10-point thing that we can give to everybody, that everybody's responsible. Because I know the school district has a weighted kind of responsibility, and so do other kind of educational institutions, charter schools and whatever. But it's all of our responsibility to make sure our kids can read. And there are things that we have to be doing to make sure that when they get to school, that they're actually ready to learn. And that's incredibly important. And we miss those things. And those becomes responsibility of city government, of nonprofit organizations, of parents. And those are things that we can do.
And you're doing it during the summer. Why during the summer? Because you're going to prepare now for school that starts in 7-8 weeks or so.
Absolutely. We're putting this out in the summer. We want to push it in the summertime. We want to be able to make it a full scale kind of marketing campaign throughout the school year. And we really want to change the culture of the way people think about reading and learning and its relationship to every other kind of issue that we have in the city.
Now, give us an idea, the 10-point literacy program, give us an idea of what's in this. What do you want kids to do?
Right. So in terms of educational institutions, we want to make sure that there is embedded kind of literacy, high rate literacy in one-on-one tutoring in schools. We want to make sure that they're increasing writing in schools, particularly in those grades, pre-K to 3. In terms of parents, we want to make sure that they're receiving the proper prenatal care, which is incredibly important. We kind of bypass that and don't understand that the developmental stages of the child and not getting the proper prenatal care affects their ability to read once they come out of the womb. So we're telling parents to even to read to kids while they're still pregnant.
Right, because they can hear.
Right, and get their husband or boyfriend or whoever to read to the kids while they're in the womb, to make sure that we build libraries, that nonprofits are helping parents build libraries. Data shows that kids that have upwards to 200, 300, 400 books in their house do better. In fact, increase their opportunity to be in school longer than those who don't have libraries in their home. So we need to make sure, and parents don't have money to spend on books. So nonprofit organizations should be making sure they are giving books to children. And any after-school program, particularly city programs, should have a component of literacy engaged in it. And I'm asking all of the funders to not fund programs that don't have a literacy component in them. So we have to begin to engage. And we're going to start with Newark programs first, whether you're swimming or golfing or playing basketball. We want to make sure that there's a literacy component, whether you're passing out books, giving people the opportunity to drop everything and read, whatever it is that you're doing, that there's a literacy component to it.
And you want this taking place now during the summer, laying the groundwork from the school year starts. Look, we've hit the ground, we're running, and we want this to basically be coordinated with the schools, with the curriculum in schools.
Yes, absolutely. Two things that I think is important. One is to make sure we asking the school district to make sure they have more culturally relevant curriculum, that the books and literature that they're giving to our kids reflect their cultural backgrounds. That's number one. Data is showing that kids become more engaged when they are reading books that have pictures of them in it. In fact, it's called mirror books. The second thing is that the city has pre-K-3 availability for all parents. So if you have a 3-year-old, they should be enrolled in school. And we have to make sure that that actually happens, that you're enrolled in school. The same way when you know you're in elementary school, you're going to middle school. When you're in middle school, you're going to high school. And when you're 3 years old, you should be engaged in regular school.
You have a new library director just appointed this summer, Christian Zabriskie. How does Zabriskie figure in all this?
Well, yeah. So he was there. Want to make sure that they already have programs around literacy that they do with us in with the school district, whether it's the Mayor's Book Club, or making sure kids have library cards, or passing out books, or having book fairs or book events. We want them to do that continuously. So they are a part of this process as well.
And you're doing this, as I said, during the summer, and the nonprofit and community organizations, they're on board now to get this going. No delay. This is urgent. 19% of the third graders reading at level. And if we don't act now, what?
It's a disaster. And my liaison with the educational department, with the system that works with us, clearly said, look, the same kind of urgency and fervor we use to replace lead service lines is the same kind of urgency we need around this. This is just as monumental as us making sure we change every lead service line in the city, that we need to make sure that we do these specific things to at least give our kids a fighting chance to be able to compete.
Have you said to yourself, if we don't do this, then this is going to happen?
Yes. I look at the violence and crime. I look at unemployment. I look at, all these folks that are saying that there's no, the labor statistics are very high, that unemployment is high, there's no jobs, no people applying for jobs. All of this goes back to our ability to get kids to graduate from high school, to get kids to go to post-secondary school, to give them certifications, to make sure they have high-paying jobs. All this goes back to making sure, as in the Obama kind of MBK plan, that kids are entering school ready to learn. And by the third grade, that they're actually reading on grade level. That's what you have to ensure. And it's not as difficult as we make it out to be. These are things that we can actually accomplish.
And the parents play quite a role in this.
Yeah, they have to make sure that they're receiving a proper prenatal care, that they're making sure that they are enrolling their kids in school by age 3, that school goes to 5 and 6. So you can go to work and still put your kids in school. We need to make sure that that is happening. And that's really a cultural shift that we have to make in the city, that make sure that 3-year-olds are not in like are in a program where they're just being babysat, but they're in a program that has a structural educational curriculum.
You mentioned employment as part of this. When kids reach the proper reading levels and so forth, and everything after third grade relies on reading and understanding and comprehension. And you mentioned employment, and today you also kicked off this program at Barringer High School,
Right.
About summer youth employment, and this is leaning heavily on the carpentry workshop at Barringer High School and the apprentice programs there. What is that all about?
Well, it was great today too. So seeing all those kids engaged in carpentry. So what it does, we partner with the Newark Public School System and with the Carpenters Union. So we actually pay kids to be a part of this program throughout the summer. Some of them continue throughout the school district throughout the year. But absolutely what it does is make sure kids are OSHA 10 certified when they leave there, that they have their OSHA certifications, and that they can be further OSHA certified when they finish these programs. They can go on and become apprentices and become a part of the Carpenters Union, that they're learning real solid skills in these programs. They have practical kind of application here, that they're actually building things and getting paid to do that throughout the summer. When I was in Speedy, all we did was clean vacant lots. So we didn't really build anything. So these are skills that are transferable that they have when they finish the program.
What did you see that they had built in the workshops there?
Well, they were like building out a frame. They were framing doors, framing a house. I mean, it's incredible the things that they're learning at the ages that they're learning it at, and they're learning the safety around those things. So there goes the OSHA certification, which means that they're adults now that are going to OSHA classes trying to get these certifications now, that these kids are getting at 17, 18 years old. So they're one step ahead of the game once they begin to try to make this a career for themselves. So I was very excited by that.
Do you think some of them now have the skills and on the way to the certification where they can go out in the next year or so and land a job in carpentry?
I met a kid in the program who's not in the program now, who was in the program last year, who now is a full-fledged union member of the local, who's building from Newark, who's a part of building. In fact, he said he was working on Shaquille O'Neal's building down there that just got finished built, which is incredible to me. You know, I met the guy, and shout out to him, who went through the program, who's now a full-fledged union member.
What does that say about the trades and people getting certified and skilled and educated and trained in the trades, when so much of what is pursued in our society is artificial intelligence and all this technical and high-tech stuff, when simple stuff, plumbing, electricity, all this stuff there's still a great demand for that.
Absolutely. And we're always going to be building something. And sometimes the skills change a little bit in that, and you have to learn more. But we're always going to be building buildings, bridges, other things like that. So it's necessary to have that training. And you know, it's interesting at the press conference, somebody raised the point that there's not a lot of people joining these trades anymore, right? That they think that there's a kind of gap in folks trying to get these jobs. And I was saying, well, that's not the reality. Is that we have not allowed opportunity and training to go to specific communities where they could benefit from this. There's a whole cadre of people that would love to be trained in these skills and be a part of the union, so they can continue to access the American dream like other families did decades ago, that they can do this. We have to open the door for them.
Have you ever done any carpentry work?
Not any real carpentry work, brother. I did a spice rack in high school, at University High School, brother. Some bookends. We used to have shop. I don't even know if they have shop in high school anymore, but I did those things. That was the extent of it.
My dad was a carpenter before he went into politics, and I'd learned some of those skills in watching. And I got to say this, what I've done, like building bookshelves and things like that, it's really to step back and see what you've done and see it
Yeah.
finished and all, and people
Yeah.
using it, it's really, really rewarding
Yeah.
to do that. I'm talking to Mayor Raz Baraka this evening about some programs taking place in Newark for youth. One around a carpentry apprenticeship program at Barringer High School and other trades and so forth. And we've been talking about getting youth in Newark, getting the literacy rates up. If you want to join the conversation, it's 973-297-0941. That's 973-297-0941. We have other topics to talk to the mayor about this evening. And I want to move on now, Mr. Mayor, to the affordable housing and zoning. You wrote an editorial that was published this week in NorthJersey.com newspapers talking about zoning laws and changing zoning laws to allow where there is space now, for instance, someone having a basement, someone having an available room, changing zoning laws so that you can help ease the housing crunch and the affordability crunch. Is that a message that's being heard though across the state?
I mean, people are debating it. Whether they agree with what I'm saying is a whole nother kind of issue. But there is a serious housing crisis in New Jersey, in the country. I mean, homelessness in this country is growing. It's not going in the opposite direction, and the rates of housing are increasing. You know, the cost of living is going up. So we have to find places for people to live in a diversity of housing, and see, the more housing you have, that's what capitalism about, really. The more housing you have, it drives prices down, right? Because you have more in the market as opposed to the scarcity. And so you need more opportunity for people to have access to housing, and allowing like seniors on a fixed income in the city of Newark to rent out their basement is something that we need to do. Right now it's illegal. And instead of fining seniors, we need to make sure that they are doing it up to code, that they have the permits to do so. They can get an extra income in their house, and maybe they can have somebody in their basement or their relative or somebody like that who needs housing. And that's important for us to be able to do. And folks are trying to couch it as it is as a developer's thing, but developers already the zoning is already favoring developers. They can build what they want to build at the height that they want to build it at, because they're building downtown. They're not building in communities and neighborhoods for the most part. And so you're talking about smaller developers, homeowners who are trying to expand, find an opportunity. Maybe they move into a smaller place and rent out their house. All these kinds of creative things that we need to be able to do to provide opportunities for housing. And in the suburban communities, because this zoned so strictly, you're not allowed to do 2-family homes, 3-family homes in these communities, which creates a serious level of density in communities like Newark, right? And drives the prices up because there's no competition for that. I can't go live in Livingston, for example, because there's no 2-family homes or 3-family homes in those communities in Livingston.
And in those communities, not to pick on the Livingston, but in a lot of places outside of cities, you'll know what I mean, and I'm sure the people listening will know what I mean. They don't want to see those people coming.
Right. So, there's always a kind of characteristic that people have in their head that they think who's coming to their neighborhood, which generally is wrong, right? So affordability looks like a whole bunch of different people in a whole bunch of different circumstances and conditions. You may not be able to afford a home. You might want to rent, right? And so it's important to have a 2-family home or a 3-family home in certain communities that are not allowed. The zoning doesn't allow that in these communities that are very close in proximity to the city of Newark.
What specifically are you proposing Newark do along with the city council, the planning and zoning board to accomplish some of these things that you envision that need to be done?
So we threw a lot of things at the wall and try to get whatever to stick. And we knew when we went through the community kind of discussion, some of that stuff will be pulled back. We kind of, reforming it, if you will. And so, or revising it. So we got ADUs, what you said is dwelling units that people can rent out their basement or other things, but it can't be separate from the home. We changed that. And we also allowing people, if you want to do that, to make it a conditional use. So the neighbors can still go to the planning board or the zoning board and say, listen, I don't want this in my community. This is the reason why. And as long as it's a logical kind of explanation as to why this shouldn't be here, we understand that. Other than that, we want to give people the opportunity to do that if possible. And what people don't understand is every neighborhood, it's not a one size fit all. So I can't make laws that only benefit 100 people in a specific neighborhood. That these laws have to stretch across the city and be applicable to as many communities as possible. Because when you say you don't want this in your neighborhood, it shouldn't preclude other people from having it in theirs, right? And so we have to figure out a way to be able to create that. Like there are people who are upset about parking in the city, but less than half of the people in the city actually own cars. So for me to make a law that like leans towards parking in the city means that I'm making laws for not the majority of the people in the city. Well, I have to keep that in mind and make sure that we address that. We also have to make sure that we make policy that is even and equitable for people in the community who actually don't have a car, that need public transportation, that rely on public transportation, right? That we create housing for them and stores in their community so they have to travel outside of their community to go to these stores, right? Whether you're talking about a cleaners or a laundromat or a barbershop or eatery or a supermarket, those things need to be allowed in specific communities that just don't have that, or a car to go to Whole Foods.
I know you're familiar with the Mount Laurel principle and what's been happening with Mount Laurel and that decision, and where New Jersey stands right now in terms of the enforcement and the enactment of the Mount Laurel decision. It seems like not a whole lot has been done since that decision in terms of making affordable housing in areas outside of urban areas, outside of Jersey City, outside of Asbury Park, outside of Newark and Patterson and Trenton.
It's a hot button issue, man. You know that. These people are voters, they're homeowners, they're really concerned about this. At the end of the day, it's the right thing to do to provide affordability across the state of New Jersey. It actually will make their taxes lower. It just doesn't make sense. People always complain about taxes in New Jersey, but vote against the things that would actually make their taxes lower. These things would do that. It will provide housing. It will reduce the price or the cost of housing in the city, whether you rent or your mortgage. It reduces that because you have more availability of that, and people don't understand that. And we're still focused and scared of who the person is. We have a picture of the person coming in our neighborhood, and we trying to push them out as opposed to allowing more opportunity and diversity of housing in our community. And nobody's had the real will on the state side.
I was about to ask you that one word, the will.
Yeah, they don't have the will on the state side to really raise this stuff in a kind of forceful way that will create the debate that we need to be able to talk about why these communities won't change. Even the federal government is incentivizing people to change their zoning ordinances, giving people money and grant and so forth and so on to change their zoning ordinance to address affordability. But folks are refusing to do that. And on the other hand, complaining that the cost of living is too high. So it's really like contradictory when these grants and other things exist for you to build affordability in a neighborhood that reduce your taxes, because the more people that pay taxes, the less burden it is on you, right? If you don't understand that, then that's just 101 mathematics.
But then they argue, on the other hand, you bring more people in and it stretches our resources. We have to do more now. We have to do more now with less money with the fire department and other services and schools and things like that.
Well, that's not necessarily true. And so at the end of the day, the argument, and there was a great article, in this magazine that talked about how nationally people talk about all these environmental things that there's no real evidence like it's going to be a strain on the infrastructure. It causes flooding, and there's a parking situation. All of this stuff is like, these are things that are speculating. These are not evidentiary things that have actually been proven to be the issue, right? So people, this causes gentrification. None of that stuff is true. That's number one. Plus, like, because you bring in people in your community does not mean that they're going to be on welfare, right? It does not mean that they're automatically going to strain the social fabric of your community, right? And so if you need to increase the fire department, right, you have more people paying taxes to be able to do that. So it's not a greater strain on you. You have to make a decision whether that's the case. Then you really have to make a larger decision, which is, do you need a fire department? Or should you partner with the neighboring town to have a fire department that is covering you and a neighboring town? And the reason that we don't do that, because we have this home rule that really like confines us to doing the specific things and paying taxes for police of a community of 400 people.
Not Mayor, Governor Murphy has been a big proponent of cities consolidating resources. I've done a couple of pieces
No, absolutely.
on that. I want to switch gears here and talk quickly about the Newark sewer and water rates increasing, and they're going up. Over the next 3 or 4 years, it seems like they're going to go up quite a bit for some folks.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to the water department. They are making an argument about it. It's not like etched in stone yet, but they're making an argument about that they need to make some serious upgrades to the system as we are having water main breaks and other kind of issues that are happening with an older infrastructure in the city of Newark, that they feel like they have to make these repairs and do other things across the water system, and giving the amount of revenue that they're getting now, that is just simply not enough. I think ultimately what happens that evens that out is when we're able to build more. And so people who are like opposed to us building and doing all these other things are actually condemning themselves to more costs, right? So this goes to the argument we just had. So the more development we have, the more people we have, the more even the cost would be. It would stabilize your rates, as opposed to 20% of the people in the city paying 100% of the rates, right? You need more people as ratepayers to be able to, kind of stabilize those rates in the city.
I want to switch gears real quick, Mr. Bear, and talk about the Port Newark fire. The city lost 2 of its bravest in this fire. From your understanding, they went in there to fight this. What was burning? Vehicles were burning in there?
Well, as far as I know, I don't know what actually, when I got there, they were in there, but yeah, vehicles were burning, but there were actually people in there as well. So it's a cargo ship.
Right.
They're workers there. The workers tried to put out the fire. They were unsuccessful. They called 911 like anybody else would.
Right.
And after they called 911, 911 called us, and that's how that works. And we responded, right? So the fire department really had 2 things to do. They either sit there and watch the boat burn, or they go in there and try to put it out, right? We don't have the kind of fire boats as New York City or all these places to fight fire from the water. The way they do is we have fire boats, but not adequate at a boat that high, right? So it took a ground operation, and I'm not going to second guess the commanders that were there.
Right.
They made split decisions that most of us aren't prepared to make, to make a decision to go in there and put those fires out. And I stand with whatever they did. Obviously, moving forward, we're having like serious conversations with the port, collectively, about how we can put things together to prevent this. Whether we're talking about a specialized unit, whether we're talking about specialized equipment, that the city and the port together figures out what we need to create to be able to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Mr. Mayor, switch gears, just a minute left. Where are we in terms of consideration for running for governor?
We're moving forward, brother. We're getting closer than ever. How about that? We're getting closer than ever. As a matter of fact, I'm bringing some people on. We're still raising money. We're bringing people on to, and I know a lot of people think, we're not really serious about it, but I am seriously thinking about it. So just to you, I'm seriously thinking about this as a real, possibility for me. And so at the end of the day, the closer we get, the more we will be able to make an announcement about what we're going to do or not. So I am seriously thinking about it.
It's summer 2023. The race is in 2025, I believe it is. So when do you think you might make a decision?
Sometime next year, brother.
Sometime next year.
Yes,
so we have plenty of time to talk about
it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
When we come back, we'll be talking about Rutgers Newark University and its quest to find help for folks who have Alzheimer's and their families to do so much about that. We have a very interesting conversation coming up. Stick around. Welcome back to Newark Today. I'm Michael Hill. In our second half hour here, we have a lot to talk about in terms of Alzheimer's and what Rutgers University Newark is doing about that, and some of the research it's doing. I'm joined in studio here by Glenda Wright and also Dolores Thornton Hammonds, and we're going to talk about what they're doing in terms of outreach in the city of Newark in the county of Essex and in this area about reaching out to folks and trying to get them involved and participate in this study we're going to talk about with Dr. Mark Gluck. We want you to participate in this conversation as well. The number to call is 973-297-0941. That's 973-297-0941. And Glenda, Dolores, welcome to Newark Today on WBGO. Thank you for coming in this evening.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you for having us, Mr. Hill.
Michael, please.
Michael,
I'm very excited
all
I'm
right.
very excited to talk to you about the work that you know. I've spoken to you on the phone, and I want to talk to you about the outreach that you're doing. You are working with Dr. Mark Gluck. He's a professor of neuroscience and public health at Newark, Rutgers. He directs the Aging and Brain Alliance program there, so we want to talk about that as well. He is just returning from the Alzheimer's Association's International Conference in Amsterdam. And I spoke to him before he went to Amsterdam about the research that he's doing, this national study of familiar-based Alzheimer's diseases study when you see clusters of a disease in a family. And this is important because this disease affects so many people, as Dr. Gluck and as you know.
Yes.
And Dr. Gluck explains that not a lot of research has been done in this area. I'm going to go ahead and play now. This is the first part of my conversation with Dr. Gluck.
Here at Rutgers Newark, we're part of a national study called on familial-based Alzheimer's disease. So we're particularly interested in working with collaborators, partners around the country at families that have multiple incidences of people who have dementia. So a parent, a sibling, a cousin, an uncle, because when you see a cluster of people within a family, a cluster of blood relatives who have Alzheimer's disease, it suggests that there's in particular genetic reason for this, that this family, they carry a gene that increases their risk for Alzheimer's disease. And we know a lot about the genes for Alzheimer's disease in those of European descent. We don't know nearly as much about the genes for Alzheimer's disease in those of African ancestry.
And so your study hopes to get to the bottom of that to determine if the genes are the same or if they are different?
Right. Well, we know that for late onset Alzheimer's disease, so Alzheimer's that starts in the 70s and 80s and above, that the genetics of Alzheimer's differs by race, that the genes that impact Alzheimer's risk in those of Asian ancestry, African ancestry, and European ancestry are all slightly different. There's overlap, there's commonality, but there are clear differences in which genes are important in one race versus another. And so we expect that the same may well be true for the genetics of Alzheimer's that occurs in families where the Alzheimer's tends to happen early in life.
Has there been much research in this regard in terms of African Americans and trying to get to the bottom of early onset where it's common in the family that people in their 50s, early 50s in some cases, or even their early 60s develop Alzheimer's?
There hasn't been as much work because there hasn't overall been much participation by African Americans or outreach to African Americans across the country at Alzheimer's centers. So at Rutgers University Newark, we've built a major center for the study of aging and brain health and Alzheimer's in African Americans. And we use that base of focusing on African Americans to enhance our understanding of all aspects of Alzheimer's risk in people of African ancestry.
And so in this particular case for this study, what are you doing in terms of outreach, and what do you want from the people you do reach? How do you want them to participate?
So our outreach programs are quite extensive in Newark. We've been working in the community, in the Black community in Newark and surrounding areas for about 17 years. And we work with churches, we work with the mosques, we work with alumni associations, public housing, a broad range of community organizations, faith-based organizations, all the various organizations and groups that are involved in the Black community in Newark and in East Orange and the surrounding area. And what we're doing is we're reaching out and we're trying to identify families that have multiple cases of Alzheimer's and across multiple dimensions. It can be siblings, parents, and so forth. And we bring them in. We do some basic testing about memory and family history. And a critical part is we get genetics, either from saliva or if people are willing, we can get the genetics from blood. And this allows us to understand what it is that may be common among many members of the family that may be part of the clue to why this family has a high incidence of Alzheimer's disease.
Doctor, give us a sense of that outreach and what the results have been. Are you getting a good response in terms of participation?
We've enrolled, in terms of all of our studies, not just this family study, we've enrolled over 500 older African Americans ages 60 and above into our various studies of aging and brain health at Rutgers Newark. So we have a very large community outreach program. Most of our community programs are focused on community needs. We do health education. We provide opportunities for learning how to improve fitness, how to improve sleep. So most of our work in the community is based on finding ways in which we can help the community help themselves reduce dementia. And then through this community engagement, through providing educational and brain health support programs in the community, we can tell people about our research and give them an opportunity to help fight back against Alzheimer's disease.
And back in the studio here with Glenda Wright and Dolores Thornton Hammonds, when we start talking about outreach, you are the front line for outreach for this program. Glenda, tell us, what do you do? What exactly does that outreach look like?
Well, from the beginning, when I first met Dr. Gluck, and I was reading some information about Alzheimer's disease, and when I was told that African Americans are 2.5 more times likely to get Alzheimer's than any other ethnic group, I was just stunned. And I could not believe it. And that helped me to become a part, or it forced me to become a part of this undertaking. Right now, what I do with Rutgers, I am the outreach community engagement person. And I go around to the community talking to mostly seniors that are 60 and over in reference to minimizing our risk of Alzheimer's disease. And we have to make sure that we exercise regularly. We have to challenge our brain. We must manage our stress. We must get a good night's sleep. We must socialize with others and eat a healthy diet. These are the major factors that how we can reduce our risk in Alzheimer's disease. And that has been proven through the data that Rutgers have collected from all of our participants.
And Dolores, let me ask, when you share this message with participants, with people, potential participants, and others at community organizations and churches, what's the response? What do people say?
First, they be afraid to do it. But then I have that knack of getting them to do it. It's the way I approach them and the things that I say to them.
Give me an idea of what you say.
I tell them how, when they tell me nobody in my family have it, first thing I tell them, they don't know whether someone in their family have it or not, because they don't know all their relatives. So that helps. And when I start talking to them about how they can help themselves by exercising, as Glenda had said, and eating correctly. And I tell them, instead of going to the fast food places, go home and cook, fix you something to eat. But the main thing is, I think they're afraid, but then I tell them, don't be afraid, because it's something that we need to do. Because if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. You can't go to your doctor and tell your doctor, oh, I have a headache. I misplaced something and I can't find it. That don't mean that you have dementia. And the doctor's not going to say, okay, I'm going to send you to a clinician to be evaluated. They'll tell them to take a pill, and the pill's not going to help them. They need to go and get themselves evaluated to see what's going on. And we down at Rutgers, that's what we do. We evaluate them to see if there's anything, if there's anything
once
there.
They come in.
Yes. We, first thing they do is the blood work, and that's down at 90 Bergen Street,
Yes.
the blood work and the saliva. Then they go in for the longitude testing, which consists of memory. Then they do the MRI. So these are things that you can find out if there's something wrong. And if it is, we send them to a clinician to be evaluated.
Good. And Dolores, let me ask you this. I'm listening as you're talking about people coming in and being evaluated. And when folks hear this and think, oh, that's going to cost me. So, what does it cost?
I let them know straight up. I don't want to see no insurance card. The only thing I want to see from you is your COVID card, because you have to be COVID.
Right.
So there's no insurance, and I let them know that straight up. We pay you. You don't pay us.
Well, you do.
Yes. So I let them know that. And all it takes from you is a little bitty time to say, yeah, I'm going to be evaluated to see if there's anything going on. I myself don't know anyone in my family that have it, but don't mean nobody don't have it.
Right, right.
I also let them know about glaucoma, which is hereditary also. I have it, and I let them know that I have it. And nobody in my family have it, but somebody somewhere down the line had it in order for me to have it.
Right. Glenda, do you know of anybody in your family who has Alzheimer's?
Well, I have a sister that she does have early onset dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And there's always a burning question in all of our minds. If a family member have it, the first thing we ask ourselves, will I get it?
Right.
And to be honest, you don't want it. So whatever I can do to minimize my risk, that I'm going to do. And this is why I'm so adamant about getting out in the community, encouraging people to join Rutgers with this program. We're not a Tuskegee experiment. We're not a Henrietta Leakes experiment. We're just out here trying to make people aware of this dreadful disease, which strikes us more than any other ethnic group.
Do people, when you cite those statistics, do people say, wow, I didn't know that?
That was my first thought. I was taken aback. I did not know that our stats were that high with Alzheimer's disease. So again, whatever it takes for me to minimize my risk and anyone else that I can reach, that I'm going to do.
Now, do they call the center to make an appointment to come in? Because I see the number on the Alliance's website. Is it the 973-353-3673 number to call to participate?
Some call.
Okay.
Some, when Glenda go out and do her presentations, they fill out cards, and I call them.
Right.
And I have long conversations with them. And even when they come down for the blood work and they have to sign a consent form, I go over the whole consent form with them. And when I finish, I ask, do they have any questions? And even doing the consent form, do you have any questions? Some have questions and some don't. And I am so grateful that the questions that they ask today, I can answer it. Once upon a time, probably I couldn't. I would have had to call the lab to ask. But now I can, because like it's a dementia, it's a very ugly disease. And this is what I say to them. And nobody wants to get it. And nobody knows too if they have it, because it can be in your body 5, 10, 15, 20 years and never know that you have it, when all of a sudden there it is. And people don't realize that. So we're here to teach them what they need to do, what they should do, what they need to do. And exercising and eating correctly is one of the most important things that you can do. Sleep. We need to get sleep. And that's something that we just don't do. We don't get enough sleep. And it's not because there's guns going off outside or something. We just don't. Stressing, we got to eliminate that. And I know Glenda talk about it, and so do I when we're doing a presentation of things that you need to stop doing.
Right.
And
No, go ahead.
There's so many like socioeconomic factors, though, that we're at risk of. even living in substandard housing, the environment we live in, there's so many factors
That's
that
trauma.
all of this has a bearing, I do believe, with Alzheimer's disease. When I'm doing my workshops at senior sites, they're very attentive when I begin to talk to them about how we can change our lifestyles. And one thing I stress to the senior population, it doesn't matter how old you are, there's always room for change. If there's something that's going to help you minimize your risk, please don't say, well, I'm too old to change. No, you're not.
Right. I called Dr. Gluck after Rutgers came out with an article a couple of months ago, and reached out to him after I read the article, because in my family, and for the record, I want to be clear about this, in my family, relatives are going to participate in this study, because the prevalence of Alzheimer's in my family is just when I say my family, my in-laws' family, is just extraordinary from generation to generation. And we're dealing with that right now in my very own family. And so we have a daughter who is terrified of this disease because she's seen it. My wife and I take care of my wife's parents who had it. And there are other relatives right now recently diagnosed. There's one in Texas who is on a home hospice because he's on in the latter stages of it. So I know how serious a disease this is, and I've seen it in this family from one generation to the next. Over the years, I have talked to different researchers who are doing the kind of work that Dr. Gluck is doing with this national study, and mentioned to them about my in-laws' family, and most of the time the response I've gotten was, oh, wow, that's really something. Dr. Gluck is the first one that said, yes, I want your family to participate in this study. And so here we are. I want to play another segment here of Dr. Gluck talking about some other things with this study. And in this segment, the doctor's going to also talk about an event that took place last month the gala that took place in Rutgers, where I saw some of the.
It was wonderful.
It was
wonderful.
incredible.
Yes, it was.
It was great,
and the community enjoyed it.
Oh, it was. I'd never seen anything like that before. Never seen anything like that before. And it was a conference there. It was a conference where, let me explain, it was a conference that had researchers from across the country, but it also showed in real life what another component of this alliance and this program, which is getting people involved, elderly people up, moving about, talking, socializing, which you say is so important to help prevent this disease. Here's more of my interview with Dr. Gluck before he went to Amsterdam for the international conference.
Once there's a family that has now, or maybe had a history, there may have been a parent who had dementia and passed away, an uncle, a sibling. We want to get all the members of the family, those who are young, those who are old, those who have dementia, and those who don't, all to participate in the study, or as many of them as are willing, so that we can compare the genetics of those in the family with dementia and those without dementia, so we can help zero in on what are the genetics of Alzheimer's that runs through that family.
And doctor, what's the overall goal here? To know what?
The overall goal is twofold. Partly it is to understand the mechanisms of Alzheimer's, especially the genetic components of that, because once we understand the genetics of Alzheimer's, then we can do two things. One is we can identify early on people who are at high risk and then develop interventions that can help them before they get dementia. Because right now, most treatments for Alzheimer's, or all treatments for Alzheimer's, wait until somebody already has Alzheimer's disease and then tries to provide a cure. And the problem is, by the time someone is showing the signs of Alzheimer's disease, the dementia, the loss of cognition and memory, they're about 80% of the way through the disease. So what we call Alzheimer's disease might be better thought of stage 4 Alzheimer's disease, when stage 1 to 3 is the part that's happening silently below the surface. And we know now that we need to get in at stage 1, maybe 5, 10, or 15 years before the dementia and the memory problems begin. So understanding the genetics, one big thing is to help us identify people early on who might be likely. The other is once we understand the genetics, we can ask, what does that gene do? How does it affect different parts of the body and the brain? And then can we develop interventions that are specific? And there's a broad trend in medicine, not just in neurology or psychiatry, but throughout medicine, called personalized medicine. And what personalized medicine means is that it's medicine that's specific or treatments that are specific to somebody's genetics. So you don't just treat someone because they have certain symptoms. You say, because you have these symptoms and you have this gene, we'll try this drug. But if you have the same symptoms, but a different gene, we'll try another drug. And so we understand now that many different treatments, many drugs or other treatments work differently depending on somebody's genetics. And so understanding the genetics in African Americans will give us the opportunity to apply that future treatments personalized to those of African ancestry who have particular risk genes. And that's really sort of the direction of all of medicine, is this personalized medicine where the treatments are specific to the genetics.
Doctor, I'm curious. I asked you this some time ago, and I was just curious because you're so steeped in this field. And my question was, how do you prevent Alzheimer's? Say in your study, it's determined that someone who's 37, 38 years old is showing no signs right now, but has a mom or a dad who is in the early stages or has been diagnosed as early onset Alzheimer's. What do you say to that 37, 38-year-old who may have the gene and it's determined that a person has the gene? What do you say to them about prevention? What should they do?
Well, the good news is that overall, about half of the risk for Alzheimer's comes not from genetics, but from one's own health and lifestyle behaviors. And so what we say to somebody from a family like that, or anyone, is that you have the power to change your health behaviors, and in particular to increase your rate of exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, the kind that gets your heart rate increased, to improve the quality of your sleep, to reduce unnecessary stress. These are three of the things that are probably most important that you can try to manage. So exercise, sleep, and stress. And if you do that, you can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease. You can't necessarily prevent it. It's not a cure-all, but it reduces your risk. And so I would say the same thing to someone from a family like this that I would say to just about anyone, is that to adopt brain healthy and also heart healthy behaviors, such as improved exercise, sleep, and stress reduction.
Doctor, I've seen your program in action. It's not just on the medical side, but it's on what I would call the social activity side. The dinner you held last month at the national convention, national conference that you had in Newark, I saw members of church groups with fancy hats and dancing and moving and, I mean, living it up.
They were, and many of those women and men who were performing at our national conference last week were themselves participants in our research studies. So a big part of our commitment to the community is not only to do everything we can to help the people in the community reduce their risk for Alzheimer's, to improve their sleep, to improve their exercise, but also to share with them the data, the results that we get from their participation. So part of what was going on last week at that conference was celebrating all that we've learned from the community by sharing that knowledge back with the community.
Mm-hmm. That's Dr. Mark Gluck, there, professor of neuroscience and public health at Rutgers University in Newark. He directs the Aging and Brain Health Alliance at Newark and is asking people who have dementia, Alzheimer's in their family line to take part in this national study that Rutgers is conducting. And in the studio with us once again, Glenda Wright and Dolores Thornton Hammonds, talking about their involvement in getting people involved in the study and reaching out to folks. And Dolores, I want to go back to something you said. You said the program pays for people to come in?
Yes.
How much does it pay?
It's $50 for each thing that they do, which is the saliva and blood. That's the first thing. And then they do the longitude testing. That's $50. Then they do the MRI. Plus they do pay for transportation. So it doesn't cost anything just to be in the study. We pay you. And like I said, it's nothing to do with your insurance. And I'm the first person that they see because I'm there to do the blood work and the saliva. And the only thing I want from them or ask them to bring to me is a list of their medication. If I don't be done, got them all. and their COVID vaccination card. Those are the things I need. I don't want to know your ID. I don't want to hear about no insurance. That has nothing to do with it. We don't take that. We just want to take care of the people to make sure that they're okay. And this is what we're doing. We also starting up a dementia support group.
Right.
Something that's it's dear to me, because when I met Dr. Gluck, I was doing grief support, and I told him about it. So I'm starting out a dementia support group, which is something we really need, because we can help each other that is going through dementia with someone that we're taking care of, just like we do in the grief support. And during my grief support, I talk about dementia too. And the people that's there be very interested in it. And some of them that come is participants. And I tried my best when Glenda do the bring the peoples in, bring the cards in. I try my best to get them to come in. Some say, no, I'm not interested, but me and my talking to them has gotten people to come on in. I mean, this is what I do. And it's something I love doing. I love working with people, and I love what I do. I love working down there with Mark and everybody, because I learn a lot from being there.
Glenda, when you go out and you during your workshops and so forth, and you're talking to people about this study and about lifestyles and so forth, what do you say to yourself when you know you can look at someone and what you're saying, that message resonates, and you get someone to participate in this study and to come in and say, look, I want to know, I want to help?
I feel exhilarated. I mean, I feel really good because they care about themselves, especially when they sign up to participate. And I commend Dr. Gluck and Rutgers for having such an extraordinary program, because there's no other school or facility in the Essex County area that have the caring, to introduce Alzheimer's to the population. We have over 500 participants, and Mike, I can truthfully say most of 99.9 of the participants, they enjoy it. They tell others about it because they want to know. It's just it's a voluntary program. I stress that at my workshops. I let them know it's a voluntary program, but still, in my conclusion, when I'm doing the workshops and if they want to sign up, if I have 35 participants in my workshop, I can guarantee you 30 sign up for the participation.
That's fantastic.
They do. It's just a wonderful, I'm in awe of this program because it has helped me. I want to live, and so does everyone else. So that's my goal, is to live healthy.
And we have people that come.
We have to leave it there. I'm sorry. I want to thank Glenda Wright and Dolores Thornton Hammonds for coming in, talking about what's taking place at Rutgers, Newark, which is trying to get African Americans in to participate in this Alzheimer's study. And you can certainly contact the Aging and Brain Health Alliance at Rutgers, Newark, and Dr. Mark Gluck. I'd like to thank him as well. Thanking the team here too. Anthony Nieves, the board operator, Ken Downey Jr., screener, Jamara Wakefield, social media coordinator, Ang Santos, producer, Doug Doyle, executive producer, and I'm your host, Michael Hill. This is WBGO Newark.